Hi, everybody. My name is Anthony Mercurio. I'm a senior advisor at Win the Era. We're so thrilled to have this community united again and coming together to support some amazing candidates and amazing folks here tonight. So as everybody here knows, the Win the Era community knows more than ever that the top of the ticket gets the most attention, but there's a lot of really important races to focus on. And tonight we're focusing on attorneys general. They do incredible work all over the country every day, protecting us in and out. Tonight, we're lucky to be joined by Attorney General Dana Nessel from Michigan, Attorney General Aaron Ford from Nevada, Attorney General Letitia James from New York, and someone who's super familiar to all of our former PFA family and the Win the Era community, Congressman Anthony Brown, who is running for Attorney General in Michigan. We are going to have a great panel in a few minutes with our current sitting attorneys general. But first, I'm going to turn it over and have Congressman Anthony Brown welcome us.
Hey, thanks, Anthony. First of all, let me say thank you for the opportunity to be part of this evening. I want to thank everyone who is part of Win the Era. And certainly those of you who I had an opportunity to meet across the country in the Buttigieg campaign. It was a privilege and an honor to serve as the one of the national co-chairs. And I'm very excited about what Pete is doing in service to our nation today as a secretary over the Department of Transportation, being on the Infrastructure and Transportation Committee. We've had an opportunity to work closely during the past 13 or 14 months in his leadership at that department. But I'm excited, not so much that I'm leaving Congress, but that I'm able to join a group of professionals who are serving as our attorneys general in New York with Letitia James and Dana Nessel and Aaron Ford. And I'm really looking forward to teaming up with them as we work together, also individually in our respective states, and whether we're working on strengthening our democracy and safeguarding against the Republican efforts to undermine elections, or whether we're expanding the right to vote, rights for the LGBTQIA plus community. So I'm really excited. We're running a strong campaign in Maryland. We're leading in the polls. We're outraising our opponent. However, I've got a day job on Capitol Hill while my opponent is a retired judge and gets the campaign full time. So we're going to work hard. We're going to work smart. We're going to win this. And certainly would certainly appreciate and welcome whatever support folks from part of Win the Era are willing to provide to my campaigns. I'm looking to work with the attorney generals around the country. Thank you. Back to you, Anthony.
Thank you so much, Congressman. It's so great to see your face, not in Iowa this time, or wherever we were around the country. All right, so I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to turn it over to another familiar face, another former PFA staffer, Ayodele, who is now one of the amazing people helping run the Democratic Attorneys General Association, who is making sure we elect Democratic Attorneys General all over the country. Ayodele, turn it over to you.
Thanks, Anthony. Hey, everyone. It's great to be here with my fellow PFAM, with Team Pete. Thank you for sharing this evening, not with me, obviously, but with the great AGs that we have here. Dana Nessel from Michigan, AG Aaron Ford from Nevada, and Tish James, our great Attorney General from New York. So I'm very privileged to be part of this program. I thank Win the Era for providing this platform, and really looking forward to the rest of this event. 2022 is going to be a massive year for DAGA. We have over 30 races, AG seats up for grabs this November, and our main priority is to defend our incumbents, make sure the great AGs that are here, come back and continue to do the work that they're doing in each of the individual states. But we also want to, go on offense. We want to make sure that we're picking up new seats, that we're expanding our committee. Because when it comes down to it, our attorneys general are on the front lines of defending our democracy. And so it's so critical that we not only, protect our fantastic incumbents that are doing amazing work in the states and, fighting for justice and fighting for their constituents, but that we continue to grow this committee and grow this caucus of great AGs. And so that's why I'm so excited to be part of this event. That's why I'm so excited to do the work at DAGA. That's why I'm so excited to partner with organizations like Win the Era as we shine a spotlight on the work that's being done in these individual states. And so, I'm gonna kick it to AG Tish James in a moment. I want to give a brief introduction of her. I'm sure this is not the first time you're seeing or hearing of AG James. She's the 67th Attorney General for the state of New York. She has decades of work and experience as an attorney, a public servant with a long record of accomplishments. She's the first woman of color to hold statewide office in New York and the first woman to be elected Attorney General. In 2013, Ms. James was elected Public Advocate for the city of New York and became the first woman of color to hold citywide office. As Public Advocate, Ms. James served as a watchdog over New York City government agencies and as an advocate for the city's most vulnerable communities. She transformed the Public Advocate's office to be a formidable engine for change, just like she's doing in the AG office right now. Her office has handled over 32,000 constituent complaints and passed more legislation than all previous public advocates combined, including a groundbreaking law that banned questions about salary history from the employment process to address the pervasive gender wage gap. And, in the AG office, she's only grown that impact, continued those efforts. And, I don't have to speak about the work that you see in the headlines every single day. She is an ardent fighter for the people of New York and, an advocate for folks all across the country. And so I'm so excited to introduce her. And without further ado, I'd like to hand the mic over to Attorney General Tish James.
Thank you, Ayodele. Thank you so much. And hello, Team Pete. It's great to be with people who are looking ahead, not just to the next election cycle, but to the next generation. Of course, I want to thank Congressman Anthony Brown and hope and pray that you will support him and hope that he can join the AG community, because we certainly are going to need him in the struggle for our democracy. And of course, I want to thank my sister, Attorney General Dana Nessel, and my brother, Aaron Ford, for fighting the good fight and for being here today. And a big thanks to Daga for seeing the big picture and for helping us defend democracy in court on the front lines, state by state, issue by issue. It's never been more important to have Democratic attorneys general. And that's why I especially want to thank all of you for joining us, for standing up, and for putting some skin in the game. Translate skin into resources. Today, our country is at a crossroads. We've been through tough times. COVID economic crisis. We saw the fault lines along race, along gender, along economics. We see the long struggle for racial justice, extreme inequities, and polarization, political polarization, which was evident most recently at the confirmation hearing of our next Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. We're seeing a surge in hate crimes against anti-Semitic crimes and crimes against the AAPI community, and a wave of unjust state laws that would restrict the right to vote, the right to choose, the right for every one of us to simply be who we are. We can't let that happen. And I think I can speak for Dana and for Aaron in saying we will use the full powers of our office to fight for things that matter most: equality, justice, opportunity, and the ability to recognize that we're all in this together. When I was elected to the AG 4 years ago, I vowed to act without fear or favor, to hold the powerful accountable, and to be unbought, unbossed, and unrelenting and unafraid, to stand up and speak for those who cannot speak for themselves, those who are vulnerable, those who are marginalized. And that's what I've done. My office, along with my colleagues, we've sued the NRA, big oil, big tech, big pharma, and some big men. We've cracked down on scams, on price gouges, predatory lenders, and we've made it clear no one is above the law, whether they live in the governor's mansion and or the White House. And my team in New York is not alone. Across the country, 24 Democratic AGs are standing up to the powerful on behalf of the vulnerable, using the law both as a sword and as a shield, which drives me forward each and every day. Under the prior president, we were called the muscle of the resistance, the muscle of the resistance. And I am proud that's true. It was during those days that I really got to know Dana and Aaron, to fight beside them in the trenches. And let me tell you, they're the real deal. In Michigan, Dana came up as a county prosecutor. In Detroit, she later worked as both a defense attorney, standing up for clients who couldn't always afford to pay, And as a civil rights champion, scoring groundbreaking wins, and including a case that led to the Supreme Court's ruling for marriage equality nationwide. And that's why I love her and consider her a sister. Aaron has a Detroit link. He clerked there right out of law school, Detroit. He held 5 jobs. He just couldn't keep up. He just, had to take care of everything. He was all over the place. He held 5 jobs to work his way through, and he ended up with four advanced degrees. Before serving as Nevada AG, Aaron was a teacher, and he still teaches us. And this, my friends, will be a teachable moment. A state senator, a state Senate majority leader, where he learned hands-on how to beat back extreme policies. In recent years, we've had reason to come together whenever the prior president sought to abuse power, to violate our rights, to gut the Constitution. We worked together to prevent him. And when his administration tried to detain children and babies indefinitely at our border, we stopped them. When they tried to divert public safety funds to build his border wall, we sued them. They say that we support defunding the police, but the reality is it was the former federal government who actually defunded law enforcement. When they tried to restrict access to reproductive health care and transgender screenings, we blocked them. When they tried to roll back decades-long protections for endangered species to protect our environment, the water that we all drink, the air that we breathe, we restored them and more. I can say from experience, when you are taking on the big fights, when the stakes are the highest, Dana and Aaron are the kind of warriors and soldiers you want at your side. And now we're running all for re-election to finish the jobs that we started, to renew our commitment to our states, to our work, to the Constitution, and to not sit idly by and allow anyone to destroy the Constitution. New York needs Dana. They need Aaron to be reelected so we can keep pressing on, as they say in my church, on for justice together. But they're in a tight race, a very tight race in tough swing states. So everything that you can do to help, we appreciate it. I need them. I need them now more than ever. I see so many threats, and I and all of my other Democratic attorney generals in relatively safe seats, we cannot afford to lose them. And so I'm going to need each and every one of you who are on this Zoom to dig deep and to tell friends in their respective states to come out and vote. No apathy, not now. I need them reelected. So I'll turn now to them to start our conversation. And I know that they would love to take your questions. So for opening remarks, I guess I turn to, am I doing it right or no? You're on mute.
James, I can jump in and
Okay,
I'll ask a question for the group if that's okay. AG James, I'll jump in and ask a question for the group if that's okay. All right, so we'll start this with AG Ford, and then we'll go to AG Nessel, and then back around to AG James. So AG Ford, can you give us some background context on the Silver State? What's going on there now? What key issues are at play in this election? And why is it so important to have a Democratic Attorney General in that office?
Well, thanks, Adele. Good to see you, my man, and great to see my colleagues, Tish James and Dana Nessel on the screen with me as well. It's always great to be in good company with them. And let me just first say ditto to everything that Tish James just said. I don't know why, Adele, you would put me behind Tish James. She should be closing us out, not starting us off. You put us all at a disadvantage when I have to talk behind either one of them. So thank you for letting me talk in front of Dana, but shame you for putting me behind Tish. In any event, it's great to be here with everybody. And I'm delighted to be surrounded again by so many good colleagues on the screen here. The Silver State, we're on the ballot. What can I say? We had a tough election last go around, in what they called a blue wave year, where swept almost every office except the Secretary of State's office, swept me in the office, and I barely won by half a point. Half a point was the margin. 4,588 votes out of about 1 million cast. And we found out at 2:30 in the morning, the next morning, about the results of the election. I offered that in my opening remarks to let you know that they didn't give it to me last time, and they're not going to give it to me this time, especially after the successes that Tish James has been able to roll off to you in her opening remarks. The work that we have done as a cohort, as a group of attorneys general, has been nothing short of remarkable, and that has placed targets on our backs. In the Silver State in particular, they are looking at the fact that Aaron Ford was the face of the opposition of the last administration. We are a purple state. Let's be clear about that. Some want to say we're blue, light blue. I'm trying to get us to light blue. That would be great. Even blue. This is kind of teal, but blue. I'd love to get us there. But we are in fact purple. And when you look at the demographics of our state, with a vast rural population and as also a vast urban population spread all across the state, we have varied interests, whether they relate to criminal justice and reform issues, which I've led on, whether they relate to environmental issues, which I've likewise led on, whether they relate to reproductive rights, which I've also led on. Whether they relate to issues related to sovereignty for our tribes in our state. I have likewise led on that. There have been items that have come up that are going to continue to resurface. We came into this office with a goal, a job. I introduced myself to my colleagues on the day 2 on the job, and I told them we had one job to do, and that job was justice, period, point blank. That was our job in all that we do. And in many ways, you can say one word and follow it with the word justice, and that's what we do. Criminal justice, environmental justice, gender justice, racial justice is what we stand for in this office. And we look at justice through the eyes of what we call my 3 C's. And that's a focus on consumer protection, where we have taken on, for example, the opioid epidemic and the manufacturers and distributors who have led to such devastation in our respective states, but particularly in Nevada, where we consider ourselves and have been, in fact, one of the hardest hit states in the nation. Consumer protection is the first C that we look at when it comes to talking about justice in that particular arena. We talk about criminal justice and reform, where in the aftermath of George Floyd's killing, we were able to convene enough individuals around a table to pass legislation to give my office now the ability to investigate law enforcement departments who are alleged to be engaging in discriminatory or unlawful policing. And that passed unanimously and was signed, incidentally, on the anniversary of George Floyd's murder a year afterwards. And so criminal justice is being something that we focus on under that particular C. And then the third C that I introduced to them under the guise of justice is one that relates to the Constitution and the protection of all constitutional and civil rights, every single one of them, from 1 through 28. Some will say, including my astute attorneys general on the screen, Aaron, there are only 27 amendments, but they will understand when I say, no, there are 28. And the 28th is the Equal Rights Amendment. And that's the reason why we continue to fight for the constitutional rights of women in our state and in our country as well. I am in litigation right now with my colleague from Illinois, a Democratic Attorney General, to ensure that the ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment is recognized by the archivist. And that's something that my predecessor refused to do and would not do, and a successor who is from a different party, frankly, would not do either. These things are on the ballot. And looking at justice through the lens of those 3 C's is what's happening in the Silver State right now. It's going to be a tough race. I have a primary that is with the same individual I had last go around, so we feel pretty confident around that. But the general election, there's a Republican primary as well, with 2 individuals, each of which will bring their own unique challenges to me in a general election. So we are looking to do what we can, build coffers, get the words out, talk about what we're doing in our state, introduce myself to individuals, and remind them of what we've been doing and what we will continue to do and what we plan to do going forward, so that November of this year, hopefully before 2:30 in the morning, we'll be able to raise our hands in victory yet again and continue doing the work we've done, and so much important work we've done in this state.
Great, thank you, General Ford. AG Nessel, I'd like to cast the same question to you in regards to your work on behalf of Michiganders. If you could just share some background context on the state of Michigan, what's going on the ground, what key issues are at play in this election, and of course, why it's so critical that we keep a Democratic AG in that office in Michigan.
Yeah, well, let's see. Last Saturday, we had the former president in Macomb County for a rally where he was supporting his choice for Secretary of State, for Attorney General, and for some other races as well. And I took it upon myself to have a Facebook Live session with one of our county clerks, as well as one of our state senators, to do a live fact check of everything that Trump said and his cohorts during this rally. It was 4 hours. Can you imagine 4 hours of trying to fact check Donald Trump and his allies? It was a very exhausting evening, but I thought it was very important because what we know is that 99.9% of everything that comes out of his mouth and those who support him is a flat out lie. And I didn't want the record to go uncorrected. But the truth of the matter is we're in a really perilous time in our state and in our country. So to highlight the things that my Republican opponent, who is very likely going to be the nominee for the Republicans, who Donald Trump has endorsed early and often. Let's see, number one campaign promise, putting myself, our Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson, and our Governor, Gretchen Whitmer, in prison together. That's a campaign promise. And by the way, he's got statewide jurisdiction criminally in all 83 counties in our state. I said to our secretary and our governor, you know what? Sucks for all of us, but only one of us knows how to draft a habeas petition. So girls, you better click out with me because I'm going to be very popular. But I mean, that's a pretty scary platform. I talked about cleaning up PFAS in our state and holding drug manufacturers accountable and going after Betsy DeVos whenever she tried to divert funding from public schools to wealthy private schools, when I was running. But it did not occur to me that this would be an actual promise that now he was making as to the three of us. By the way, it doesn't say what we did wrong or anything. There's no hint of like what potential crimes the three of us may have committed, but he is certain that he's going to imprison all three of us and lots of chance to lock her up. People seem very enthusiastic at that at the Trump rally. Number two, promised by my opponent to vigorously enforce our antiquated 1931 abortion law, which makes abortion a felony in the state of Michigan and has only gone unenforced since 1973 because of the Roe v. Wade opinion, which many expect to see overturned. He has promised to enforce it with no exceptions. Let me say that again, with no exceptions, not even to save the life of the mother. And he said that was why he actually didn't get the support of Right to Life in Michigan, because they were, even Right to Life was horrified that if a woman had, say, an ectopic pregnancy or something of that nature, that he would prosecute any physician who performed an abortion, even under those circumstances. But the Republicans running for AG in my state have actually gone a step further, and now they're after Griswold v. Connecticut. So they want to ban birth control in our state as well. Seems a little counterintuitive, of course. If you're anti-abortion, seems like you should be pro-birth control, but apparently it doesn't work that way. I don't have a full understanding of like the concept, but that's what they're looking for. And unfortunately, in Michigan, we have a lot of antiquated laws in the books that just were never repealed, whether it's the sodomy laws, whether it's the, bans on same-sex marriage, whether it's, interracial marriage. A lot of these things are only legal because we have Supreme Court opinions, which may not be around much longer. And the last thing you want is an attorney general who's going to enforce these very old statutes and criminalize behavior, which has been deemed to be fundamental rights in our state now for decades and decades and decades. By the way, I want you to listen to this. My opponents refused to say, when asked by a reporter, if they believed that Brown v. Board of Education was properly decided. No comment. No comment. Can't even say if Brown v. Board was properly decided. I mean, I'm not really sure where to go with that, but apparently that's where the Republicans are at nowadays. But most scary, a couple fronts here. Domestic terrorism. Let me talk about that. And why should all of you care who are not from Michigan when I talk about domestic terrorism? Because we have a real domestic terrorism problem in Michigan. And what happens in Michigan doesn't always stay in Michigan. And you might remember that the Oklahoma City bomber that plot originated in Michigan with the Michigan militia. And unfortunately, the only one who has the ability to control that is me, the Michigan Attorney General, because we don't even have federal laws that prohibit domestic terrorism, only foreign terrorists. So it's up to me to enforce those laws, and I am vigorously, so that what happens in Michigan, for instance, I'm prosecuting a number of different white supremacy organizations right now and domestic terrorism organizations. The base, the literal translation of Al-Qaeda. We, for the first time in Michigan, have prosecuted people under an old law that is never been prosecuted before, but it is training with firearms for the purposes of mounting a civil insurrection. 4 convictions we just got on this group called the Base. Wolverine Watchmen, who plotted to kidnap and assassinate our governor. Those are our cases. We have many, many other cases like that. And obviously the hope is that we don't have that kind we don't have buildings blown up and we don't have widespread carnage in Michigan, but I don't want it in your state either. And unfortunately, a lot of the people who went to the United States Capitol on January 6th first came to the Michigan Capitol on April 30th of 2020. But lastly, I will say this, if I haven't scared you all enough, it's that we every day are seeing challenges to our democracy in Michigan, such that it is a concerted plot by the former president to put AGs and secretaries of state in these swing states, to plant people there specifically for the purpose of undermining the 2024 election. And let me say this, without the Aaron Fords in Nevada, without the Josh Calls in Wisconsin, and without the Dana Nessels in Michigan, we will not have the electoral votes so that it matters whoever wins the Electoral College in 2024. It literally won't matter, because those 2 offices, the Secretary of State and the Attorney General, are so pivotal in terms of certifying a state election and defending the results of a legitimate election, something that we had to work very, very hard to do in 2020. Not just those of us in the swing states, but our brothers and sisters in non-swing states who came and helped us, like Tish James and like Maura Healey from Massachusetts, and like others who came aboard and helped us on our cases because we were so overwhelmed with the litigation. Just know that's all coming for you, and it's coming for the United States in 2024. And if we don't win these offices in 2022, this year, I'm not trying to be overly dramatic, and I'm not trying to use hyperbole. I'm just telling you the truth. We don't win these offices this year, I don't know that we can preserve democracy in the United States of America. And that is the long and short of it. There are things going on right now. You know, AG Ford and I and many others have investigations ongoing right now. There are activities afoot in my state right now that we're investigating because they have this concerted plot to ensure that the election can be thwarted in 2024. So that's what we're looking at. It wasn't on my bingo card when I decided to run. I never talked about this during the 2018 election because it never occurred to me this could actually happen. But here we are.
Thank you, AG Nessel. And you touched on a very important point when it comes to you know, abortion rights and reproductive rights, and how those are genuinely on the ballot this November, knowing what might happen in the Supreme Court. Just briefly, I wanted to kind of do around the horn and discuss more about reproductive freedom. The Supreme Court is about to rule on Mississippi's abortion restrictions. We'll start with AG Ford, and then we'll move to AG James after. So AG Ford, I won't make you follow up this time. But could you talk about what's at stake when it comes to reproductive freedom, knowing what's happening in other states, including Mississippi and what we've seen in Georgia, Florida, and what AGs can do to protect every woman's right to choose?
Absolutely, and my apologies for falling off. My Wi-Fi signal is messing up a little bit, so if I fall off again, I'll jump back on as soon as possible. But yes, you're right. Reproductive rights are on the ballot. Now, we're fortunate in Nevada in the sense that in the 1990s, we passed a statutory initiative that essentially codifies Roe v. Wade into law, and it cannot be undone absent a ballot initiative, essentially from the people of our state. That said, that doesn't mean that an attorney general, for example, my predecessor, can't file amicus briefs and lawsuits and lead lawsuits trying to undermine that right for others to practice in their own states. And that's something that my predecessor did, in fact, do. And so recognizing that this right isn't just one that's confined to a particular locale. Folks oftentimes have to traverse state lines because of the restrictions in their respective states. That means that there's a possible impact in Nevada if the Supreme Court does as we think they're going to do, which is to undermine reproductive rights of women with this next election, with this next decision that comes out. And one of the first things that I did when I got into office was to undo what my predecessor did on this exact issue. Instead of filing lawsuits and briefs that were looking to undermine that right or to thwart that right, I signed on to briefs that were looking to protect that right. And in fact, led briefs in the Kentucky case, for example, attempting to protect that right as an amicus, leading an amicus brief on behalf of my other colleagues in the Democratic arena to protect the constitutional right to an abortion in Kentucky. So, it's not, again, it's not something that the state of Nevada, particularly right now, will see an immediate, negative repercussion relative to the rights that the women have in our own states, in our own state, but it is something that, again, traverses state lines, and we have to all be, we must all consider that as we continue to protect constitutional rights throughout the country.
Great, thank you, AG Ford. AG James, posing the same question to you. Knowing that the Supreme Court is going to rule on the Mississippi abortion restrictions, can you expand also on what's at stake and what AGs like yourself can do to protect every woman's right to choose?
Yeah, so they're gonna gut Roe versus Wade, and not only that, Oklahoma today passed a bill or introduced a bill, again restricting reproductive choice. And the reason why it's so really critically important that we expand the number of Democratic attorney generals and that we support and defend these two warriors is, listen, our office, we joined a coalition of individuals who stood up and defended Title 10 family planning rule. We defended the Affordable Care Act when that was under attack. We sued the Trump administration for attempting to raise the cost of abortion services under the Affordable Care Act. We've, when the former President Trump, when he wanted to strip women of their rights to coverage under ACA, we stood up. We filed briefs in all of these states that are restricting a woman's right to choose, from Mississippi to Texas to Oklahoma, and the list goes on and on and on. To be honest with you, I can't believe that we're still dealing with this. That's a New York word that I won't say here because we've got all these fine, wonderful individuals. But the reality is that this is my body and my choice, and this is a wedge issue, and the Republicans have a playbook, and we've got to stand up, defend our base, talk about these issues. The large majority of Americans support a woman's right to choose. And we have to let individuals know what is on the ballot and what is at stake. And that's why it's really critically important that we support these two fine attorney generals.
Thank you, AG James. I don't think anyone can say it better than that. So we're running short on time. We have about 7 minutes left. I want to ask one more question that we have planned, then we'll try to sneak in one question from the audience as well, but no promises again. Only about 7 minutes left. So AG Nessel, I'd like to pose a question for you. As AG James alluded to earlier, you have had a significant impact when it comes to fighting for LGBTQ rights. And piggybacking on that, we've seen anti-LGBTQ state bills skyrocket from 41 introduced in 2018 to over 200 introduced in just the first 3 months of this year. AG Nessel, can you tell us why democratic AGs are so important for LGBTQ plus rights?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty simple. We fight vigorously to support members of the LGBTQ community and to support their rights, whether it's, education or public accommodations or, employment, or just the right to be free from hate crimes. We fully support that community, and we fully support rights for all marginalized communities. And the Republicans are the exact opposite of it, and I mean, as I in my department, I mean, just the things that we've done since I've taken office. I mean, whether it's through my AG opinion making powers, which bind state agencies, we were able to make it easier for transgender residents to be able to change their gender marker on their birth certificates, which is a huge deal for those folks. I mean, it's a huge deal to be able to have on their birth certificate and their driver's license, their gender identity. But, I argued a case a month ago before the Michigan Supreme Court that will, if successful, permit full civil rights under our state civil rights statute for LGBTQ people, and our ethnic intimidation law. We were successful in amending the ethnic intimidation law in Michigan so that gender included gender identity, because we have a huge problem with transgender women in particular being, subjected to a parade of horrors when it comes to, hate crimes. And now they are included in our state hate crime law, and they weren't before because of our office. I mean, we really do have a lot of power in our respective states. Sometimes it's at the federal level when we're challenging something, all of us together, or we're fighting something awful, all of us together. And sometimes it's in our respective states where we have probably the most power. But it makes all the difference in the world. The guy that the last guy who was in office, a guy by the name of Bill Schuette, who was there for 8 years, I was on the other side, always fighting against him on issues of adoption for same-sex couples, on issue of marriage for same-sex couples. And now, instead of having, the community having to fight against the state, they're represented by the state. You can't say that there'd be a more monumental difference between having a Republican and a Democrat in this office when it comes to respect to the LGBTQ community. And I mean, even though I am a member of the community, that goes for all of us in DAGA. That is every single one of us, and it's all of us working together as a team.
Thank you, AG Nessel. So we have the opportunity to ask one question from the audience. I see a really good question in the chat from LD Stewart. So we'll treat this as sort of like a rapid fire for everyone. We'll stick with AG Nessel, and then we'll go to AG James, and we'll wrap with AG Ford. So AG Nessel, what is one thing that you would identify as the biggest need from powerful advocate supporters? And is one thing that you would identify as the biggest need from the grassroots or supporters, volunteers on the ground that will help you be successful in your goals? I would quantify our goals as winning in November.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, always money is good, right? I'm not going to say that money is not incredibly important, but I think it's actually more than that. And I think a lot of it is, you can have all the money in the world, but if you don't break through to Generation Z and get them interested and excited in voting, it doesn't matter. So we also need to have, surrogates, I mean, people who, like, I don't know if anybody here knows people that are really, appealing and popular with the younger generation that can get them interested and excited and start sharing things on social media and let them know why they can't tune out the noise because it's so overwhelming. Voting, use it or lose it, man. I mean, this is not a time to say, you know what, I'll get involved when I'm a little bit older. I'm kind of busy now, because you're not going to have the chance. So I would say those are a couple things that I can think of.
Yeah, Dana's on point. It's the apathy that's out there, and we've got to get the younger generation. And listen, we've got to put some elbow grease into it. And so it's time to knock on doors. And it's time to talk to individuals, even individuals who we may disagree with. And they need to understand what basically is at stake. And though they may disagree with us on one issue or another, they can't be single issue voters. They got to recognize what's at stake, our democracy, and our freedoms and our liberties, basic liberties. And if they come for the LGBTQ community, and if they come for the African American community, and if they come for women, then they're going to come for the next person as well. And that's why we've got to stand together with no space between us.
Thank you, AG James.
Yeah, I can't think of anything more important than what has already been said. The money is going to be important. The overcoming the apathy is important. I've mentioned a blue boycott as the reason why in 2014 Democrats lost everything and Republicans swept the entirety of the state of Nevada, and we're still reeling from the repercussions of that. We don't want to see that happen right now. And we all know that, frankly, during midterms, Democrats are notoriously apathetic. And during midterms, you combine that apathy with the fact that during midterms, generally the party in power sees is more likely to see some negative outcomes. I think we need to be very cognizant of that fact, especially in states like Nevada and in states like Michigan. Tish James continues to lift up, Dana and me, and I appreciate that. There as well. I've said before in her own state that she's not just the Attorney General for New York, she's actually Attorney General for the entire country, because she's done so much to help so many folks, so many of us in this cohort. And it's important that we keep that in mind. We need a strong cohort of individuals who can work together, as we have done these last 3 years and 4 months, to move our country forward. So those are my responses to your question there, Ayodele.
Right. Thank you, AG Forward. So this has been amazing. I'm very used to time moving very quickly when I'm in the presence of our great AGs, and so you all got to see time fly by. And so I'm a little sad that we're already, at the end of this event. Thank you again to everyone for being here. I want to kick it to Maxwell with Win the Era so that he can help close this out for everyone.
Great. I'll just say thank you to our amazing panelists, and we appreciate everyone jumping on here. I know there's links in the chat for folks to donate. We'll follow up over email as well to make sure folks are connected and joined up with these campaigns, and we look forward to helping you all out over the next many months. So thank you all for joining.
Thanks so much, everybody. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Good night, everyone.